Hello and well met. This is Laverne with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to go over the new 2024 5e, weapon mastery. This is determined by the weapon that you use, and also you get a feature if you are a martial character, and that will give you weapon mastery. The way I'm going to handle this and the way I'm moving forward with the 5e 2024 content is I'm going to build all the different variations of fighters until I get kind of used to it, and then I'm going to move on to clerics. But as I'm doing so, I'm also notating changes that I think are necessary, or that I think would help the community and people like us that are running games. For example, when you get weapon mastery, it really doesn't give you much. It just tells you what it is, and it says your training with weapons allows you to use mastery properties of 3 different kinds of simple or martial weapons. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can practice weapon drills and change one of those weapon choices. So you get about 3 of those to start with. When you reach certain fighter levels, you gain the ability to use the mastery properties of more kinds of weapons, as shown in the weapon mastery column of the fighter features table. So I really didn't see anything that was going to give me that information. It was missing. So I went on to the forums and I asked, or I requested that they add something so it's easier for us to reference. So when I was building characters, I thought, well, that's a roadblock for some of us, because one, you may not be familiar with the rule set and how things are going, and a lot of us are still new to where everything is. We got used to how things used to be. So what I was proposing is that they either link a list here or some kind of reference that we can use when we're building a martial character for the properties of weapon mastery, because it's determined by the weapons themselves. So to look up every single weapon would be a pain in the butt. So what I was doing initially was going over here and clicking on this, and I said, oh, okay, I got the slow property. So then what I was doing is taking this notation here and just putting slow next to the weapon, because I wanted to know what the the advanced features are for this particular weapon. So that's kind of where this started, is like, I thought that was kind of inconvenient to have to do that for every single item that you get. So again, here's the Nick property. So I was putting a notation here, and I still think this is a good idea until you get used to the changes in the rule set. And this will help you down the road when you're playing, so you don't have to dig through a bunch of books. And I know that's part of the game, especially like if you're around a table, but you want to be able to find this stuff at a glance. You don't want to have to go through the whole book looking for it. And then the next thing here is the Warhammer. So if I look that up under the weapon mastery properties, there is push. So these are the 3 weapon masteries that I have for the level that I'm at, which is in this case is level 1. So that's something that the little things like this will occur to you as you're using this rule set. So Zacchaeus very nicely made us a list. So if I go to, this is a weapons list. This doesn't exactly exist in the player's handbook, but it is essentially just another compiled list of things. So what he did here is he added some inline tables, and then next to it are the mastery list properties. I don't know why they didn't do this. Hopefully they make an errata for the player's handbook, because it's ridiculous to have to go through every single weapon and look that up. So at a glance, now you can see all the different masteries easier. So before, it was just listed here under weapons. And it says each weapon has a mastery property, which is defined in mastery properties section later in this chapter. To use the property, you have a feature that lets you use it, and that feature is weapon mastery. So this kind of gets into the proficiencies, which is pretty much, we're used to that. But when you actually get down into the weapon mastery properties, they're all listed here in text. And this isn't very convenient to find that when you are looking up something and you got a bunch of characters you're making. So this next page, Zacchaeus has very kindly taken up the request to add in this reference sheet so that you can see which weapons have which masteries. So that's one of the things you're going to come across if you have a martial character that is allowed to use the weapon mastery feature. So what you can do with this, and what I suggest to do, is either bookmark it down here at the bottom, which I've already done, and also in the weapon mastery properties for the class, for the fighter, this is the basic description here, but there's no table. I don't know what they were talking about. It says weapon mastery column of the fighter features table. I don't remember seeing that, but if it's this, then that's great. So what I wanted to have them do eventually, if possible, is take that information and populate it in this record. That way you're not having to do anything extra. So what I would do is take this and just edit this weapon mastery feat here and just take the actual link and link it here. So that way when you're given that feature, you're not spending extra 10 minutes looking at every single weapon up. It's all right here. So that's a tip that I've kind of learned as I'm going, and I've asked Smiteworks to add this feature, and I think he went and built this. He made this for us so that it's a lot easier to reference at a glance instead of trying to look up every single weapon through the descriptions, which takes a while. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think there's a quicker way. And one of the advantages of virtual tabletops is to have those hyperlinks, so you're not flipping through a book all day. And I think that's part of the the experience. But when you're not at a physical table and you're using a virtual tabletop, why not harness the ability and the power of it? So just making that simple little change, just linking this list here to the weapon mastery property of the feat for the class fighter section, I think that's a very helpful tip and a very useful thing going forward. The next thing I'm going to be doing with this is also taking each of the weapon masteries and adding them as a note or an effect. So most of these will just be a notation. So this will help if you're going to make a character and they're on the combat tracker and you're still kind of new to the system. The players will be able to see what it is their properties are for their weapon, and it will kind of jog their memory. Oh yeah, I get this extra thing or whatever it is. So I'm going to make the weapon masteries down here in a group on my character sheet, and then I'm going to add them to the spells area, which are basically like effects. So I'm going to make a new group. I'm going to call this weapon masteries. So I just click the green plus button, and now I'm going to edit the list here. And I'm going to call this weapon masteries. And I imagine over the years or months, they're going to add a couple more, but at least I'll have a good start on it. And so this is the type of thing I'm going to be doing for a while until I'm comfortable with the rule set, and then I'll start playing. I don't think I want to introduce anyone to this until, one, a lot of the bugs and the different things have been worked out, and two, so I get my mind wrapped around the changes and the things that are occurring in the rule set. So I'm going to make things a little easier on myself. Instead of fighting through this stuff and complaining and whining, I'm going to spend my time doing this kind of stuff, is actually looking at the content, using the content, and then making little notes and references for myself to make it easier. So I don't have to sit here and dig through a bunch of stuff and, go on the forums and fight with people about what is and what isn't. I'd just rather just do this, focus on what I can control. So what I'm doing here is creating a weapon mastery list, and this is where I will put these effects, if any, in this group. So once I'm done renaming that, I will stop editing, and this is going to be my new group. And what I'm going to end up doing is making this for the fighter or for a martial class, and then just list all the weapon masteries here. and make them an effect that will go into a section on my character sheet under this weapon mastery. So instead of this class fighter thing, I'll make my own weapon mastery section, and then I'll list the masteries that I actually have for my particular character based on the weapon types that they have. Because I have slow, nick, and push. So those are the 3 weapon masteries that I would like to have on my character sheet. Even if it doesn't do anything mechanically, at least I know what they are. I'll have quick reference to them, and they'll be in a separate thing that I can drag onto my sheet. So I don't have to sit here and dilly-dally around looking for this stuff. So that's kind of what the premise of this whole show thing here is, to kind of go through this. So this list here is handy because you get to see all the different potential mastery add-ons that come with the new rule set. Some classes don't have this, or some subclasses don't. But if you're a martial class, like a fighter or ranger or any of those other types of fighting, or paladins, you'll want this. So that's why I'm doing this. So these are all different weapons by categories, like martial, simple, and I imagine there'll be more added over time, like when you get new adventures and new third-party supplements. But for the time being, this is the reference we can use. And this would be nice to have this linked into the actual feature, Weapon Mastery. Because without that link there, you're going to have to go hunting for it. And I think that slows down your character creation process. It kind of defeats the purpose of even having a virtual tabletop to begin with. I mean, you have a search function within the book itself, so you could search Weapon Mastery, but you're going to get like 7 or 8 entries. You got to go through all those. So I decided to take the bull by the horns and do something about it instead of complaining. So I did whine a little bit about this, but I did mean well, and I actually posted on the forums, and Zacchaeus actually got right back to it, and he knocked it out. He did something to make it a little better for quality of life kind of thing. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing my own quality of life updates and such, and I imagine I'm going to have to revise some of these, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. I don't care if they change or I got to update them. At least I have a good start, and I'll have all this stuff done, and when I go to build characters, it's not going to take me as long because I'll have all this reference stuff. I might even export this out and share it. I don't know yet, but I don't know how that's going to work. But for the time being, I'm doing this for myself, and I encourage you guys to do the same thing. Go through the rules, figure out how complicated or how easy it is, depending on the character build. And if you see something missing, or you think something can be better, or maybe there's a link that should be in there, put it in the thread on the Fantasy Grounds forums. There's a thread that they started in the 5e section. So it's not necessarily a bug, but you can add it to the Fantasy Grounds website for their official forums so that they can look at that suggestion and maybe even add it. I was thinking about putting it in the features request, but I was very adamant about writing a request for every little single thing. So Moon Wizard or John told me just to put it in that thread so it doesn't get lost, because if you put it in Reddit or on the Fantasy Grounds forums, it's just going to disappear. So, or on the Fantasy Grounds Discord. So use the Fantasy Grounds forums for this type of, if you want changes made or any kind of updates to the player's handbook or anything like that. So if you go to the forums and you come down to the rule sets or game systems under Dungeons and Dragons and click on 5e, there's a thread in here that says Player Handbook 2024 Player's Handbook Bugs and New Videos. So you can put it in this thread if you like, and then this will give it more visibility, more people will see it, and then you come in here, and then basically this is where I put that information. So I basically said, hey, this is my observation, this is what I request. And so what he did is he separated out the weapons page, so the weapon properties and the mastery properties now have their own pages, so they can be linked to a quick slot for easier reference. And then I'm also taking those and linking them to the actual feature. So that's a nice thing. Now, this may not happen right away. I might have to wait for the changes, but if it's anything that is going to be permanent and you're already updated and such, but you're still kind of working out of the old content, just go to your books and then right click and then go to revert changes, actually in modules, go to right click and revert changes. And any new updates will be refreshed and added to the player's handbook. It's quite often we'll be in the middle of something, they'll update it, and those updates don't necessarily take effect unless you start a new campaign. If you're in the middle of a game or something like that. So that's one way you can help with that after you update, to make sure that the records are updated, or start a new campaign. But a lot of us are in the middle of something, and those changes don't necessarily take effect, especially when it comes to like graphics and things like that. So this is just a tip. So I'm going to get into the actual making of one of these effects. So let's take a look. I'm going to close some of these windows out. So this weapon mastery is the class feature, and you'll get this with a lot of the martial classes. This is the list here, which I've linked myself into this weapon mastery section. And then as far as the syntax goes, I took this information from the section in the player's handbook, and I just dumped it in here. And took this information, and then I think I have a chat GPT tool where it just took it and kind of rewrote these out as kind of like effects. But some of these don't need effects. They're just going to be a notation. They don't really, but just having the notation there is going to be a boon for whoever it is. So I'm going to start with the ones that I need for right now, because there's Cleave right here. I don't need that right yet, I don't think. No, I just need these three. So I'm going to start with the ones that I need first and then go down the list. So I want to make this bold. Oops, why isn't that changing? Let's see, Control B. There we go. Okay, so I don't need Cleave. I don't have Graze, but I have Nick. So Nick is basically when you make an extra attack from the light property, you can make it as part of a action instead of a bonus action. So you can make this an extra attack per turn. So you're basically getting 2 turns with that potentially, and that's with the light hammer. So if I use that, it will basically just give me an extra attack as part of that action, and you don't have to use a bonus action. So for any tips on this is kind of working down here. So no need for any automation. Just remember you don't expend your bonus action. So all you have to do is make a note for that. You don't really need to do anything. So during your action, you make both attacks with your light weapons. Your bonus action remains available for other uses. So what we can do here is just create a note for Nick. We don't really need an effect. We just kind of need like a notation. So I might just put Nick right here for this. And if you're just starting to use the player's handbook for 2024, they changed the way this toggle works. Now there's only one toggle, so you want to go to combat, or you go to standard, whatever, and then you go to this edit list, and then you can come in here and edit. So this is where I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to actually add the automation, or the note in this case. So add action, add effect, and then we're going to click on, we're going to add the effect here. So wait a sec. Okay, add action. Okay, oops, what did I do here? Okay, so what we're going to do is go into this, into the properties, and we're going to put Nick, which is the title, with a semicolon, because that just tells Fantasy Grounds to ignore it. There's going to be no rounds on it, and the target's going to be self. So all we're going to do is just say extra turn, or or light weapon extra turn, or whatever you need to do to notate that for your players and for yourself. So I'll just say light hammer extra attack. That's it. Nothing, no big deal. You could make it shorter so it's not such a long note, because that'll look kind of crappy on the combat tracker, but at least you'll have something there. So once you have that, now you actually have the properties of that, or at least a note. And when you're on the combat tracker, in this case, so if I go to the combat tracker, and I'm going to put my character on there so we can take, this is another thing you do, is you make a character, build all your automation here first, and then test it, and then drag it over to your spells so you can store them. And then once you get them all built and you're comfortable with it and you've made all your updates and stuff, then you can export it as a module and share it with your friends or use it in other adventures, so you're not having to redo this every time. So I want to take and add the effect now, which is this little button here. And that's all it's going to do. It's just going to add a note up here, and it will remind me that when I'm using the light hammer, I have this nick property, which allows me to get the extra attack. So you can make this as part of your action instead of the bonus action, and it's part of your turn. It's like an extra attack. So light weapons kind of give you an advantage on that. They don't do as much damage, obviously, but you know, you get an extra attack out of it if you're a martial character with the weapon mastery feat. So when you master that weapon, you get 2 attacks with it. So that's pretty cool. So that's one out of 8 of them or so. And let's see what's the next one. So I have push and slow. So let's take a look at push. So this is again probably going to be more of a note. So again, not really automation, but it's going to help me and my players understand what's going to happen when they use these properties until you get used to it. Then you may not even need this anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and add another one. So I'm going to click on, I'm in this group here that I made, Weapon Masteries. So I'm going to add another item and then right click on it and then go to add action and then add an effect. And then what I can do here is just call it whatever it's supposed to be. So in this case, this is going to be push, and this is a warhammer. So this is one of the benefits you get from using a warhammer. So I'm going to add an action to this, or whatever you could leave it like that if you wanted to, but I'm going to add a note. So add action, and then here's add the effect. So, oops, I got 2 of them. So what I want to do with that is, oops, add action. Okay. So what I want to do with this is basically take this, oops, I did it to the wrong thing. Let me delete that. Oh, geez, what did I do? Oh, well. So anyways, I'm going to take this, and then I just deleted my thing, but I'll take this and do push. Okay, so that's going to be the properties of it. And then right click, add action, and then click the gear cog, and then this is where I'm going to do. So I'll just put push here, semicolon after it. It's going to be basically on self. Actually, it could be on target, but I think I'll just do it because it's a note for myself. And then all you're doing is, for automation tips, there's really no automation on this. It's just basically moving. So after hitting, manually move the target's token on the map 10 feet away. So all we have to do is move target 10 feet away. That's it. Not a big deal. So push, move. Now this one you could probably expire it after the round, because you're going to use it and then lose it, right? So if you don't want that effect to be on the whole time, you could do something like that. But I don't think I need to do that because I want the notes on at all times. But if you wanted it to expire after using this push attack thing, you could. But in this case, I'm just gonna put, let's see, this one was Warhammer. So I'm just putting the note there so I know what it is, and it's on self. So build out all these actions and then drag them over to your effects area. So we're going to put this in the spells area. So even though it says spells, this is basically where your effects can be stored. And I have my own group called Weapon Mastery. And if you drag that up there, you can store this. I don't know why it says Legacy Record, but it is. And then you just keep building them until you get them all done. And then once you're done with it, you go through and test them. Put them on the combat tracker, make sure they look good. So that's the Nick property there. So let's add the push property. So now you have this. I think if you get too many of those, though, it might be annoying. So you might have to play with if it expires. Because, you might take an attack and then understand what it does, and having it disappear is not going to change anything. You'll know just because you have that effect on. And then once you've read it once or twice, you probably don't even have to do that anymore. You just know to do that. But I like the idea of having a note on there, especially for newer players and the GMs that are getting used to the changes. So that's what this whole thing is trying to get this to be a little easier. So I gotta redo the Nick one. I accidentally deleted it like an idiot. So let's see. So we want to go to Nick, and then right click on it, right click on Nick, and then go to add action. And then we're going to add an effect. Click on the gear cog. And again, we're just going to go with a description. And we get one extra. I mean, you could put ATK if you want, but the only thing I'd worry about is that might conflict with other syntax, so I probably wouldn't put that. And then I'll just say one extra attack, and this is light L hammer. So I'll know, or light hammer. And then targets, it'll be on self. So that's just little, you don't even have to do this, to be honest. This is just a suggestion. You don't necessarily have to do any of this. But this is a way for you to help you kind of get your mind wrapped around the changes and to help your players out too. So once you're done with that, just drag that up here. Left click, drag. Let's see what's going on here. Why is it not dragging? Oh, because I already have it. There we go. So there's the Nick property. So let's go to the next one, which is push. We got push, we got Nick. Let's go to slow. All right, so slow. Okay, so this thing here is if you hit a creature with this weapon and you deal damage, you get to reduce its speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. So this one, you would want to probably put an expiration on it. So let's make the effect. So we want to take and we're going to add another item. We'll label it as slow. And then we right click, go to add action, and then add an effect. So here's the effect line. It's blank right now, but let's go ahead and open it up. And we're going to edit this. So this is going to be slow. And what we'll do is we'll say -10 speed. And this would happen if you deal damage, upon damage, we'll say. I mean, these might not be the right way to, to spell it or to write it out, but you want to kind of have it shorter, but at the same time, you don't want the syntax to be the same as an actual. And then I think this would be, let's see, this says turn. So there's minute, hour, day, round. So we just do one round. So after it goes around, if you don't use this, basically, they don't stack. So in your actions tab, you add a new effect. You put the slow label. targets effect speed minus 10. I guess that's, I don't know if that doesn't do anything with Fantasy Grounds though. It's just basically a note. So we'll say speed minus 10 because you're going to be moving it manually anyways. Duration 1 round, apply the effect. So after hitting and dealing damage, apply the effect to the target. So the system will notate a manual. What's this? Why is this? It's a manual. Manual. Okay, a manual. Yep. All right. So that looks good. So it will do that, and you drag this to your target, so it has a note on there that he's -10 upon damage. So he got hit, he took damage, he's -10 on movement. So that might help you keep track of who has this effect or not, even though it doesn't do anything mechanically. So again, you can take this and add it to your list of effects under your spell effects. So even though it's not a spell, it's basically allowing me to add a condition or an effect. So this is slow. There we go. So as you build these, you'll get a library here for all your weapon masteries. I didn't do the rest of them. I will later, but I just wanted to show you that. And then when you are going to use these, you put them on either yourself or a target. So in this case, if you got an NPC, let's just go with this. Let's go with the wild boar. So if you're on the battle map or just in the combat tracker, you can take this slow action and drag it to this particular boar. So the GM remembers, or at least sees, that he has to, -10 to the movement. So that's kind of how you'd use that. So that's just basically, just stuff that you can do to help improve your gameplay and make things easier on you. I'm going to do this for a while and just kind of build this stuff out. And then there's some new conditions that Zacchaeus has made in his videos. So what I did with that is I took the video itself and I got the transcript from it, the text, which you can get from the video itself. And then I just took that information and plugged it into like a AI tool and took the text out of it, and then just used that to write some new effects for the newer conditions and stuff that are being added to the rule set. Now, some of this stuff may improve or get added later, or whatever. But for the time being, though, I just use that as a guide and then just kind of build them. Even if they're not 100% working or they're not right, I can always go back and update them and redo it. It's not a big deal because you're only going to be doing a couple, not the whole thing. So while we're kind of in a transition period, this is a good time to do this kind of stuff because I honestly wouldn't start a new campaign yet until they get more of the stuff worked out. Start working on your own reference tools and use those to help you run your games and to create your own stuff, because you're just going to be fighting and running around and jumping up and down for nothing. So, instead use your time wisely and use it like this and use it to make your games better for you. And don't worry about, the extensions and all the other crap, because that'll come. It'll eventually get worked out. There might be a few that cannot be done. There might be some new ones that are better. So, I wouldn't worry about it. The only automation I would really even want is already here. Because when I made this character, the superiority dice was already added. I didn't have to do that manually. And then it gave me basically it gave me a list of the types of maneuvers, which are already coded in. I don't even have to do it. And then the Savage Attacker that redoes the damage roll, I think that's already hardwired or hard-coded into the rule set. Dwarven Resilience, I'd put this on before I start playing. And then you got your Stone Cunning and the usages. That's changed a little bit now because of the new rules. And you have your Action Surge, which basically is just keep track of, your extra attack. So most of the automation was there. The only thing I wanted to add was the weapon masteries, if any, and And then also, if I was going to use some of the other new conditions, like the concentration effect things, but that only if you need it, you know. So you can build this out slowly, or you can spend a week, you know, going through everything and seeing what you want to add and update, and then export your changes when you're satisfied with the amount of work you've done. And you put this in a test campaign or a separate instance of your game, so that you're not impacting your game, you're not making mistakes, you're not doing that. And this will help speed things up in the long run. So hopefully this is helpful. I know this changes has been pretty rough on a lot of us, so take your time with it and get into it and see what you can do, because this kind of stuff here is going to go a long ways to helping you out. I mean, it took me probably a half an hour to collect all this information, and then I just copy and paste it into Fantasy Grounds, and then using the previous knowledge of how syntax works in Fantasy Grounds, I started using that. And at the end of this video, I have a link to Zacchaeus's new effects video. I have a link to the Legacy 5e automation, so you can kind of have an idea of what this stuff's supposed to look like. And most of that automation still works, so it's not like it's going to expire. So if you're using some of Rob 2E's or Grim Press's effects automation, most of that stuff will still work. It just may not apply depending on what the changes that were made to the classes. So, you got to kind of decide what's important. As far as extensions go, I don't know where those are at. I don't use very much of them, so I'm not going to sweat it. But my main thing is just having these things here on the character sheet available for the players. I don't care if it gets applied automatically or not. I just want it there so it can be applied. That's my main target here. I'm not worried about, if I swing with my left arm, my right arm is going to block or something. I don't need that. I just need the syntax to be there, or the notes. So you guys take care.